Hello everyone, welcome to a vlog. I got a lot of comments last week saying that my audio wasn't good, so here's a microphone that's been sitting on my desk for God knows how long. I don't know if it works. I really just don't know if it works. That is the simple reason. So I have it. I did some tests and I just couldn't tell a difference, to be quite honest. So, but I don't even know if it's on. It seems to be on. Whatever. Can't hurt. Can't hurt. All right, let's talk about the last week and let's talk about what's coming up. There's a few things to talk about. Not a lot. Nothing too crazy. So all orders have gone out, and this is including but not limited to resends and mistakes and yada yada yada. There's my teapot. I'm gonna just grab a different teapot. There was quite a few. There was quite a few, more than usual, I will say. Mistakes from the last large influx of orders. Some of the mistakes, and just a bunch of different types of mistakes. And I apologize for everyone who got a mistake, and I really appreciate how understanding everyone was. People were just very understanding and very like, hey, by the way, you made, I didn't get this. I got not enough of this. You forgot this. This went to the wrong address. And of course, I was like, hey, I'm so sorry. No, I'll resend it. And everybody was like, yeah, no problem. So that was very understanding. Probably more understanding than I would have been. I would have been a little more annoyed than some of you were. I'm not going to lie. We are drinking the coffee liqueur Shui Xian. So an interesting thought I had the other day when I had Shui Xian. Interesting. So, okay, there's everything about high roasts and low roasts. That's a whole conversation that I tried to put onto YouTube, and I unfortunately didn't because I accidentally deleted the video. I was making room because my laptop was running out of memory, and then I deleted a bunch of videos, including accidentally the one I wanted to upload. Okay, but basically, so right now Yanshas are very much focused on low roasts. And whereas before there was just a lot more high roasts, and I think, and from what I understand and the questions I've asked so far, it seems like that was the standard for Yensha to have a high roast. But now the standard, now low roasts are becoming more and more popular. And I just had this thought of like, and I've asked, and among the different reasons why, one of the reasons they say, the two things they say is, first of all, they say that roasts cover up mistakes. Yes, this is true. A high roast does cover up mistakes well. But I think at the same time, as we have here, this is the coffee liqueur Shui Xian, which is back and on sale, 20% off. I just had a thought, and I'll come back to that later. We'll see. Sorry. Been busy recently. As in this is he. Right, so, okay. And so, yes, so there are some yenchas that are, basically, when you're making yensha and you get to a point that you were planning for, and you taste some bitterness, you taste some astringency, something's not right, you can roast it higher and it'll kind of cover that up. So there is something to roasting higher to cover up flavor, but I think high roast can be intentional and achieve flavors they couldn't otherwise have, that low roast couldn't have. But I also think that low roasts have flavors and characteristics that high roasts don't have. I had a Shui Xian the other day, Old Tree Shui Xian, Yensha, Wu Shan. It tasted like a Dansong Shui Xian. It tasted like a Phoenix Oolong Shui Xian. And this is not the first time I've had this. Tastes just like a Phoenix Oolong Shui Xian. Um, and not only is that just not possible with a high roast, it has to be a low roast. But I think that's a very almost ideal to shoot for. I think if you, I've had it only one other time. I've had a bunch of old tree Shui Xian, bunch of light roast Shui Xians, and so I'm actually kind of curious. Actually, I'll eventually next year, I'll move this closer if it helps. Next year, when I start buying yenchas again, we're gonna talk about that in a second. Um, I have a maker who produced the old Chi Shui Xian that tasted like a dansong, not cheap. And I'll ask him more about it because I've had it two times. One time for my friend, one time at my friend's shop here in Geelong. Um, is he there? And I wonder, and so as I taste this tea, and it's fantastic, and it's a very unique flavor. I do wonder how much of high roasts really, how much maybe there is something to the goal, not the goal, but the ideal, the highest, the best, the highest, the most expensive. This ideal yencha was a low roast, but especially before the days of machines, when everything was done by hand, this was super fucking hard. I wrote a blog article not too long ago where I talk about this. Machines really have helped quality, have helped produce higher qualities for the normal maker, for the average maker, and have helped set this kind of the bare minimum is now higher. I'll say the standard is higher. What's kind of average is higher. It's cleaner. It's fresher. Take a sip. Oh man, interesting. Yeah, it's cleaner. It's higher. Oh, easy baby. And so I do wonder if there is something to, and so I wonder then, so I was thinking about that, and then I was like, okay, if that's the case, then yeah, these lower roast Shui Xians in the grand scheme of the market might have always been a little bit lower quality objective wise. And then with that, they turned it into something amazing. They really dove in it. They're like, look, we have to do these high roasts, so let's learn how to make really, really good high roasts. But yeah, but I think, but I was just thinking about that, and so I think, even back in the day, what was there? I mean, because I've had friends tell me that high roasts used to be much more important, or not important, but used to be the average, the standard. There was much more high roasts. But were there also low roasts, and was the goal low roasts, or where was low roasts in the 1990s market, for example? I think when I talk about back in the day, I'm really talking about 1990s, 80s to 90s. Before that, it's Cultural Revolution, and before that, who fucking knows? Who fucking knows? Which is a very, and this is a whole nother conversation. But when we talk about tea history. I was talking with someone the other day, and they are a tea history scholar. They're in China doing their PhD, traveling all around, and they were like, "Yeah, dude, like, who the fuck knows when it comes to tea history?" He says that he would find out this information, and he would learn this villager and where this important person came from, where this important thing happened, and this town, and then he would go to that town, and they were like, yeah, that never happened. Like, yeah, he's not from here. And it's just stuff like that, because we were talking about the origins of Bailin Gongfu, and I found in a book that the origin of Bailin, that the man who accredited was creating Bailin Gongfu was from Zheolong, was from where I was from. And he was like, what's the source? And I showed him the book. I think it's actually right off screen. There's a book in Chinese. And that's where he kind of went into it. And he was like, yeah, bro, don't take that with a grain of salt. Um, so yeah, but so that's just something. That's just something. As much as I've always talked about the beauty of high roast, and I love high roasts, I am now curious about the history of low roasts, the recent history of low roasts, if you will. You know, maybe it really was. If back in the day, I assume if you could produce a delicious low roast, it was good job, good fucking job on you. Okay. Speaking of yanchas, just make this quick. Mr. Wu. So I ordered 2 pounds of the coffee liqueur Shui Xian. Somebody already bought 300 grams of it. So I just sent that out today. All packages have gone out. And he sent me some samples. And the samples were delicious. And the price was nice, not too expensive. And especially after going to my other friend's shop, who was also in Wuishan, and I got some stuff that really wasn't that great, and her samples really weren't that great. To have Mr. Wu's, and I was like, damn, Mr. Wu. Like, Mr. Wu. Dang. Yeah, I realized I might have. I'm beginning to think I might take Mr. Wu for granted. Just the fact that, like I said, he's my first friend in Wuishan, and I knew him before he started winning awards when he was just starting to. Sorry, my first tea maker friend in China actually, and I knew him when he was just kind of starting out, and he was just like, yeah, I'll give you whatever, like I'll make, he was very like new in the business. And I think and he creates this amazing tea. And I just thought it was standard. Oh yeah, everyone has tea like this. But now I'm like, you know what? Maybe Mr. Wu, you are really above other people, not everyone else. But you're really not the average. And I think I'm taking Mr. Wu for granted. At least the access. I'm taking the access to Mr. Wu for granted. So, I might put some yanshas on the website next month. This month is quiet, Chinese New Year. Got to get the white teas out. Oh man, sometimes I wish the subscriptions were monthly. If the subscriptions were monthly, I could do a Yansha box. But I could do a Yansha box anyway. Okay, sorry, I'm back. Izzy has to pee. Okay. So next month, I think I'm going to do a Yansha box. Sorry, next month, I think I'm going to get Mr. Wu's teas, just a few, just a little bit, because I do have to financially prepare for the tea season, which is and we'll see. At one point, I'm going to get Mr. Wu's teas, and add them to the website. I might do it next month. There she is. I might do it next month. If not next month, a little bit later, because I was drinking these yanchas and there was heavier roasts. There wasn't anything heavy like this, but there was heavier roasts. There were lighter roasts, and then just all in all, a lot of interesting flavors. The Rogue Way was very Rogue Way, which I really like. Sometimes you get Rogue Ways and they're not really Rogue Way. They're just kind of yansha-y. When I drink Rogue Way, I want to be able to be like, yes, this is a Rogue Way. When I drink Shui Xian, like, yes, there's the Shui Xian flavor. Not just like, oh, it's a roasted oolong. Baby. Yeah, so we'll see. That's going to come to the website eventually, sooner rather than later. And I know a lot of people are asking, Mr. Wu via his Shui Xians, via the other teas I've had on the website. The people who know Sweetest Dew and have been here, if you've been with Sweetest Dew from before I moved to Fuding, or the Fuding region, you know Mr. Wu, and you know Mr. Wu brings that heat. So yeah, Mr. Wu's teas are coming, and a bunch of other Yansha stuff. All right, so something interesting happened this weekend. I do have to talk about this. I do want to and should talk about it. The Fu'an aged white tea. Now, this is one that I had changed the name of so many times on the website. I've changed the name on the website so many times because I could never quite figure out what the fuck it was. And easy baby. And so this all started when going way back. I think it was 2019. I was still living in Huangshan. It was right before I got Pumpkin. Like a month before. Actually, when I went to Fujian, and when I came back, I went from the train station and I went to pick up Pumpkin. So that's how I know it's 2019. So I go to Fujian and I go to Fuan. I'd been to Fuding for a few times, didn't really like it. Fuding City, that is. So I said, okay, let me try going into Fuan this time. Went to this tea shop and tasted this tea, and we had tasted this tea, and I thought, oh, this is pretty good, not bad. Has some stuff I don't like, but I remember it just very, very woodsy and very bold, and tasted very much like a cake, a tea cake, like an aged tea cake. And I said, how much is this? And then he gave me the price, and the price was much lower than I thought it was going to be. Because before this, first of all, this is 2019, and white tea prices are, 2019 white tea prices are pretty much at their peak. After that, with COVID and whatnot, they dropped down. 2018, 19, white tea prices are at their peak. And I've been going to this guy in Fuding, and he had been, I think, giving me really high prices and even scamming me. And he turned out to be not honest. And I have a blog article about him somewhere. So I go to this guy in Fuan. He gives me the price, and I was like, oh, that's a much lower price. But I remember, and so I buy some, and I take it home, and I put it on the website. And I remember asking him some questions, and I was like, is this a spring tea or is this an autumn tea? Because I was thinking it's an autumn tea. And he goes, no, it's a spring tea. And I was like, okay, well, let me see your fields. And then he shows me these beautiful fields, and I was like, do you have any other fields? And he shows me some of the more kind of normal looking fields, and I was like, okay. And it always kind of bothered me how flavorful it was. Just so much more than other white teas. And I don't know, that always kind of was like, something's not right here. It's almost too good to be true. This is not white tea in a way. But I was like, whatever. Like I've in situations like this, if you can't prove them wrong, you kind of got to believe them. So I put it on the website. People bought it. People really liked it. And then a few months after that was the famous article where it was I think it was Oolong Drunk and then One River Tea, and they kind of came together, and I forget who exactly wrote the article, but it was basically like, because this maker said it was 2013, and this article was like, a lot of makers will do this browning, this fake, this induced fermentation, basically, from my understanding, induced fermentation, and make this white tea browned, almost on its way to red, to fake an aged flavor, and they're going to call it white tea. Or they're going to call it aged white tea, and they always say it's from 2013. That's what the article said. And I was like, son of a bitch, there it is. Because I was like, that makes perfect sense. It's 2013, it's, something's not right. And I think I put, and I couldn't know for sure, so I put it in the description. I said possibly aged. I think at that point, maybe at that point it'd been about a year or so. And so I was like, look, I've had this tea for a year or so it's at least 1 or 2 years old. And I ran with that for a while. And then I was always on the website, slowly selling. So every now and then I would buy a pound. I'd buy 1 pound from him. I'd buy 2 pounds from him, and it was a good drinking tea. And then in my last days in Suzhou, I bought a pound or 2 from him, and he said, "Look, I only have 4 pounds left. My last 4 pounds." And I was like, "That makes sense." I will say, okay, no. At one point, so we'll just continue like that. I said, because also at this point, I was like, okay, I still don't know if it's browned. He's saying it's not, because I asked him, I said, is this brown? Is this natural? He said it's natural. And I didn't know for sure. and then somebody else, and then other people were still putting 2000. I don't know. Anyway, so for a while I was like, okay, this might be browned, but it's at least a few years old. This is not fresh browned. It's at least a few years old. So it's like that. And then so he says, okay, I only have 4 pounds left, and I was like, great. I got, fine. Because he said, I'll save them for you. He goes, I'll save them for you. And then I didn't buy any for like a year or so. I didn't buy any. It didn't really move. I was focusing on other things. I think I took it off the website for a while even. And then, so about a year later, I ran out. Orders had piled. Somebody needed more. Somebody wanted to buy a bunch more. And I was like, so I messaged him and I was like, hey, do you have any more? And he goes, yeah, I have a ton. He goes, I have a lot. And in my head, I was like, you have a lot? I thought you only had 4 pounds. One thing I forgot to mention. When I first moved to Geelong, I took it off the website, but then I think I put it back on the website because I first moved to Geelong. And as soon as I found a tea shop that I liked and I thought, this owner's very knowledgeable, I took the tea to him. And this is the guy behind the Tia Kuan Yin Red, behind the Vanilla Aroma White, the Preaching Ming by Mudan, that guy. So I take the tea to him and I say, hey, is this natural? Is this new making? And he tastes it and he goes, this is natural. This is natural. And I say, do you think it's 2013? He goes, no, it's probably about 2015, 2016. It's 2024 by this point. So I'm like, fine, that's still a good amount of age. So that's when I put it on the website again. And I put, aged Fuan by Mudan. And then what happened? So then I ran out and then I messaged him and I was like, hey, do you have any more? And he goes, yeah, I have a bunch. And I was like, that's a little weird. Okay. And I asked him, once again, so now I've been in the white tea area for a little bit and I have more vocabulary and I was like, what's up here? The flavor's not the same. And I was like, is this new making? And he goes, no, it's not new making. And he goes, it's heirloom varietal. And I was like, oh, okay, that would explain the change. So I put that on the name. Okay, heirloom varietal aged Fuan white tea. Great. And I will say, still not really, still a little bit like, okay, like things are lining up and it should be okay. But part of me is still like, something's off. And then I buy a 2015 from my friend. This is watermelon white. The family, the household that makes the watermelon white, that makes the Jinmudan red. I buy from them. I buy from them a 2015 white, and the flavors, they were very similar. And I said, okay, this does kind of support the fact that this is naturally aged. But the other day, I take the tea to her, and I say, hey, can you taste this? Do you think this is new? Do you think this is new making? And she goes, yes. She goes, yes, a little bit. And I have the video she's speaking in Chinese, so I have to send it through the translator just to really understand. But basically, she points at the color, where basically all of the color is the same. And she points at the fact that the leaves are kind of curled a little bit. Like they've been rolled. They look like they've been rolled. Which is good points. These are good points. And so part of me was like, yeah, I knew it. But the other part of me is still now like, well, this other guy said it was not. I have 2 people saying it's natural, and I say 1 person saying it's new making. I will say there's 2 things she said. First thing, she did say it's just a little bit of the new making. He rolled it a little bit. The second thing is, she said it's still pretty clean. She said it's still a well-made tea. It's a clean tea. Which does bring up an interesting point of like, it's not so much fake or not fake. It's could be just a little like, here's this technique that they used. They kind of did this, especially now that I think about it. 2015. So let's say this tea is produced in 2015. It's the height of the white tea boom. A lot of makers are making white tea now for the first time, or they've been only doing it for a few years. I can see them trying different things, rolling it a bit, seeing to get more flavor out of it. Because it's clean. It's clean and it does taste natural. It tastes like her 2015 natural. To put it simply, I don't know. So after I went home, after she told me it was not natural, I went home and I messaged him, and I kind of politely and nicely, and I was like, hey, like, are you sure it's not the new? Are you sure this is not the new making? And he said, yeah, it's Chuantongda. It was traditional making. It's a little weird way to put it, but I guess I know what he meant. And I go like, is it, where's your mountain? And then I ask and I say, you said you only had 4 pounds left. Like, what happened? And he goes, oh, I found 30 pounds. And I was like, oh, that's convenient. Which is possible. These big ass boxes. 30 pounds, 30 pounds of tea is not, for the maker, not a shit ton of tea. It's a giant boxes, I guess, can hold 30 pounds. Maybe he finds a box or two. Who's to say? And so that's where I'm at with that tea. So officially, it's on the website now as Fu'an quotation mark parentheses browned. I will say also that other makers have told me Fu'an browns their tea a lot. If you're gonna get a browned tea, it's probably from Fu'an. And even when I was talking to my friend about the tea, and she's like, where's he from? I was like, oh, he's from Fu'an. She was like, like there was a very clear, like, God, fucking Fu'an. So yeah, so that's that. So right now, jury's still out. I'm gonna take it to 1 or 2 more people, see what they think. But yeah, so it's on the website still. It's Fu'an white parentheses browned, and a little bit at the bottom. It's like, hey, I actually don't know if this is browned or not. Take it to some more people, see if we can get a straight answer. Yada yada yada. All right, well, that's that. Chinese New Year is 2 days away. By the time I post this, shipping will have been cut off. I'm going to basically cut off shipping right now. I got packages out today, but the shipper closes on the 10th. The shipper takes a holiday on the 10th. It is the 7th right now. And so if I sent out a box tomorrow, it would have to get there in 2 days, and I would have to give the address before she closes the shop for the day. Yada yada yada. So I'm gonna play it safe. Shipping is cut off. No, I can't plug that in. It's getting a little bit dark, but it's alright. Yeah. So Chinese New Year is going to happen, and then as soon as Chinese New Year ends, I'm going to get those white tea orders out. March is going to be slow because I don't want to push too much teas because I really want to save and get ready for the new season. I want to get ready for the new season. So there might not be, we'll see about monthly sales. We'll see. But all right, that's it. The Shui Xian is on the website. Obviously, any orders made before any orders made during Chinese New Year will just be delayed and then will be sent out after Chinese New Year. The Shui Xian, for those who had it before, I do like it a little bit better before. It has calmed down a lot and it's lost some of its texture, but it is smooth, it is rich, it is a little bit creamy. So it's a good one, worth getting. Alright guys, thank you very much. I appreciate all of you.